let's get straight into this. The college football season has now come to a close, and it is now time to get straight into the college football playoff as the rankings have been announced as of today at 12 o'clock Eastern Time. It's 6, 5, 4, 3, and 2, and 1. The seeds were released earlier today for the college football playoff, and we're here to discuss our thoughts and our reactions. Again, we have Shane back on as well as Alex. Say what's up, guys.
What's up?
Yo.
Finally get to talk about some college football, not just the NFL now. So
Alex, we've talked about the NFL for way too long, changing it up. Much needed college football pod and YouTube. We're finally expanding onto YouTube for this one. But let's get straight into it. With the 6th seed, they had announced that it will be Ohio State. Little debatable, some could say, because Baylor won the Big 12, and a Big 12 team is just not even in the top 6, which could be kind of debatable. A 2-loss Ohio State team will take that number 6 seed. What do you guys think?
I think that they deserved it over Baylor because, I mean, Ohio State, you could still make an argument that they are like a top 3 team in the nation. It's just the fact that they couldn't get it done against Michigan, and they already had a loss prior. So you can't give a 2-loss team a spot over like Cincinnati, for instance, who went undefeated. But Ohio State had some of the most impressive wins like we saw this season. Like they absolutely destroyed Michigan State, the 7th seed at the time. They blew out Purdue, Penn State. Like they had a really solid resume, and they just couldn't pull it off. I think that early season loss to Oregon really like messed them up for the entire season because it made them have to be perfect, and they had a really tough schedule. So, but I think they do deserve it over Baylor.
I agree for sure. CJ Stroud also had a hell of a year. They had a great receiving core this year. I mean, Ohio State just was looking great. I mean, they were for sure in the college football playoff until Michigan came in, knocked them out. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And their miraculous story of this year. The Baylor, I mean, they're a really good football team too. Came out and beat Oklahoma State in that crazy game. Alex, wait, before I say anything, did you want to say anything about Ohio State and Baylor?
Nah, it's mainly the same. Ohio State, like that Oregon loss was brutal for Ohio State. Had to win out a lot of games against tough teams, but they performed. It's rare to see them lose to Michigan, but I still think they deserve that 6th spot.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we all agree on that. But back to what I was saying, Baylor won that crazy game against Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State was just inches from getting that win. It wouldn't have propelled them into the college football playoff with how everything worked out. But still, I think they would be the 5 seed over Notre Dame if they won that game. I mean, but the thing is, like, another reason why Baylor, I don't believe, should be over Ohio State is because of how sloppy and how bad of a win that was, like, for Baylor. Oklahoma State should have won that game so many different times, to be totally honest. And Ohio State is just the better team, in my opinion, over Baylor, no matter if a Big 12 team didn't make it in the top 6.
Yeah. I would also say like the wins both teams have aren't as impressive if you compare them. Like Baylor's wins, they beat Oklahoma and beat Oklahoma State. And like that's about it. They lost to Oklahoma State too by 10 points. They beat BYU, which is good, but like Ohio State had more impressive and more dominant wins throughout the season, just blowing out teams. Clearly looks like a better college football team.
Mm-hmm. So Baylor will end up playing in the Sugar Bowl this year against Ole Miss, and the 6th seed Ohio State will be playing in the Rose Bowl. That huge tradition, the Rose Bowl against the Utah Utes, who absolutely demolished Oregon again. But we can get straight into number 5 for this year is going to be Notre Dame. I mean, it would have been tough to get them in either way. I mean, there's a lot of what if scenarios, like what if Alabama lost, um, and what if Cincinnati lost and stuff like that. I mean, it's really hard because one, they're not in a conference, which makes it really tough, and it's kind of weird. Um, and also, like when you lose your coach right before the college football playoff, it's kind of like losing like your quarterback, to be totally honest. So it's kind of hard for the committee to just let them in. So, like I'll mention again later, the committee kind of had it easy this year, in my opinion, um, ranking these teams. But Morgan Freeman is coming in. He's gonna coach this bowl game. Should be interesting. But I mean, that would have been a crazy story if they got in and he coached them to like a national championship. That would have been crazy. What do you guys think?
Yeah, that would have been nuts. It is weird to see a coach leave right before like bowl games. It's pretty rare. But like in terms of football, this team haven't really beaten that many great teams.
Yeah, they
They
did not have a great
the
schedule.
like the one ranked team they beat, or no, they didn't even beat a ranked team at the time. Like now, then they lost to Cincy. So like generally just not that impressive. But to give them credit, they beat the teams they needed to beat by pretty big margins. They held Georgia Tech 50 to 0 points to beat them 55-0, which is kind of nuts. And they had a lot of close games that they closed out, but they're just not better than any of the four above them.
Um, just have to correct Joey. You said Morgan Freeman was filling in. Morgan Freeman's an actor.
Oh
Marcus.
shoot!
I said Morgan
Wait,
Freeman.
what's his name then?
Marcus Freeman.
Okay,
Marcus
that's
Freeman.
close. That's close.
Yeah.
My bad.
I
But
thought you said Marcus Freeman.
I agree that like losing your head coach is huge. Losing Brian Kelly, like Notre Dame didn't really have like that big of a shot because they didn't really have a game on their schedule, like you guys were saying, that could have, like boosted them up from where they were besides Cincinnati. I mean, obviously, if they win that Cincinnati game and they go undefeated, they're easily in the top 4.
Yeah.
But like they just weren't impressive this season, really. But I mean, I don't want to say not impressive because they did, finish with just one loss. But I mean, like you guys were saying, they didn't have any like real ranked opponents besides Cincinnati, and they couldn't even win that game. So
Yeah.
I would make an argument that Ohio State would could deserve that spot over them, but I understand why they didn't get it because Ohio State did have one more loss and it happened to be recent. So
Yeah,
like that
it would be
argument.
really hard to put a two loss team like ever in the college football playoff, in my opinion. But I got kind of a what if for you guys. Like, I want to know what you guys think. What if Alabama like got destroyed in that game? Do you think that would have led to Notre Dame being in? Do you think Alabama would have still been in with it as a 2-loss team
I think Notre Dame would have gotten in.
and
Yeah, me
Alabama
too.
out?
I think
Yeah.
Alabama would have been out
I don't think you can
because
go. No, go ahead.
I mean, if Alabama gets destroyed by Georgia, and then
It just shows they can't play in big games, kind of thing.
yeah, and then
Yeah.
also if Bama did make the college football playoff, they'd have to be the 4,
Yeah,
and then you're just rematching Bama
exactly.
Georgia.
Exactly. I was going to talk about that a little bit. Like it's all about views, and I mean, you're not going to put the
Yeah.
same teams up against each other
Yeah.
2 times in a row.
Just banging off that, I have a quick question because I feel like this comes up a lot. When Notre Dame are hit like really, really bad historically in the playoffs, like let's say, like does the committee then not favor them anymore because they just don't succeed in the playoffs, or do you guys think it's just the season standing kind of thing? 'Cause I feel like that's the thing.
I don't think they would look at past seasons really, but I think they do take into account that Brian Kelly was gone, that they lost their head coach. So, I mean, they do look at like some factors, but I don't think they would look at a past, like, typical.
Yeah. I get what you're saying.
Yeah, but either way, like for the committee, it would have been really hard since they're not in a conference and didn't play a championship game, to put them in. So I mean, the committee had it pretty easy. But to get onto the number 4 spot that was announced earlier today, it will be the Cincinnati Bearcats, the first AAC team to ever get into the college football playoff, and actually the first undefeated team to be a number 4 seed in the college football playoff. But I mean, it's hard to put a team like Cincinnati, who's non-power 5, and they didn't have the greatest schedule until they played Houston and they beat Notre Dame, so that's still pretty impressive. But they still can't put them over these 3 other teams like Alabama, Georgia, and Michigan. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because like Cincinnati really only had like 2 or 3 games against like legit opponents that like these other 3 teams, these other like teams surrounding them, had to play like every week practically. But
I wouldn't even say 2 or 3. But yeah, go on.
but after they gave Cincinnati the 4 spot, I think was it like week 11 or 12, they couldn't drop them once Cincinnati kept on winning. Like if Cincinnati had stayed like 5 or 6, then it would have been a tough decision, I think, for the committee after Cincinnati beat Houston last week. But they couldn't drop them in the rankings. So I think it was a pretty easy decision to keep them at 4 because I mean you can't put them over Georgia. Michigan was just so impressive these last few weeks, and then obviously Bama at number 1. So I think
Yeah.
4, you kind of just have to put them there.
And I feel like the committee was like, I feel like they were looking for a lot of excuses to get them out of there, honestly, like because they're non-power 5 and stuff. But they just kept on winning, like you were saying, and they gave them every right and every reason to keep them in there. So congrats to them.
I love it. I enjoy it. I got bored of college football being the same teams and playoffs every year. It's interesting.
Yeah, a
I
lot of
don't.
people have a lot of different views. It's kind of interesting, like
Yeah,
on Twitter and stuff. Like some people are pissed, and some people are saying it's gonna ruin the college football playoff to have a non-power 5 team.
because they're gonna get
But
smacked.
I think, hey, we'll talk about that when we get to our game picks. But I don't know about that. I don't know if they're gonna get smacked. Who knows?
But it's
Because
good. I like it.
there's two different sides of Alabama you can see.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah.
But it's different. It's a new team. We obviously haven't seen them in the playoffs, so
Yeah.
it's fun to see someone else. Like Shane said, like they put them in the 4 and they just won out. Not much you can do with that. If they win games, they win games.
Yeah.
13-0, got to be in the
Yeah.
playoffs. They just can't be above the other teams.
Yeah. Well, that defense is actually very good too. Especially their secondary. With one of my favorite college football players this year is in their secondary, Sauce Gardner. I mean, that's just such a legendary nickname, bro. I mean, have you seen that edit of him where he like pours like a fake drip of hot sauce and like his him like holding a football like comes into the sauce drop? It's just such a dope edit. And that's like a sick ass nickname. I can't lie. He's like one of my favorite players.
That one. He missed the PAT, Joey. Crazy. Anyways, let's move on to the 3rd seed. It was Georgia, 12-1. How we feel about that?
I think the 3 is the right spot. A lot of people will say they deserve 2.
Ooh.
I don't think you can give them 1, obviously, because then you're still putting them over Bama, who won pretty convincingly. But Georgia was obviously the best team in college football this year up until final week, up until the SEC championship game. So, like, there's not really much to say except that can't put them above Bama. And then Michigan was just so good, like, to finish out the season, beating Ohio State, blowing out Iowa, that I think Georgia definitely deserved 2 or 3. And whatever spot they got, I mean, they're still playing the same team in the college football playoff. So I think Michigan did deserve home field, but I can see the argument for Georgia being 2.
Yeah, I just want to note before we move on. After we talked about Notre Dame, I forgot to mention like I did for the 6th seed. That Notre Dame will be playing Oklahoma State in the Fiesta Bowl. So that should be a good matchup. Interesting to see what Marcus Freeman does as the head coach against that uh, Oklahoma State team that is also looking for revenge after that terrible loss. But anyway, about Georgia, in my opinion, I think honestly they could be the 2 seed over Michigan. I mean, they still before that game they allowed like every team they played under 7 points. I mean that defense is just insane. I mean the Alabama front line, they were so inconsistent all year. Like sometimes they would be really stout, like they were against Georgia. I mean that front line, they safe to say they weren't doing what they were doing all year. And then in other games like against Auburn, the front line offensive line for Alabama wasn't doing so good. But that Georgia defense nonetheless is very good. My only concern is that they don't have that star quarterback. Uh, Stenson Bennett is their quarterback. I mean, obviously he's been very competent, playing a great season so far, but he couldn't exactly keep up with Alabama and when they scored a lot. So that could be a concern in the college football playoff going against a Michigan team that we've seen score a lot of points. So I think that should be a really good game, Georgia against Michigan. Really looking forward to that. But this Georgia team, I mean, they're still one of the best in the nation, and it's crazy to see them drop from 1 to 3 in one game.
Yeah, got a very unpopular take here. I think it should have been Michigan 1, Georgia 2, Bama 3. Even now, hear me out. Hear me
Whoa,
out. I know it's crazy. It's
Whoa.
crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy. Relax, guys. Relax. Obviously, Bama just smacked Georgia. Like it was
Hey,
good
hey,
year,
but
obviously.
Ben, let's
Hey.
remember. Hey, hold up. Let's remember again that that could not happen because the committee doesn't want them playing each other.
Yeah, I
So,
don't care what the committee wants. I care
dude,
about football.
all
Screw the
right,
committee.
dude.
Michigan was so impressive. They finally beat like Ohio State, which like that Harbaugh guy doesn't know how to do for basically like his entire life. Useless bum. Uh, they then smacked Iowa. I like them. They're cool to watch. They play good football. I'm impressed. Uh, and then Georgia is like the most dominant team in football the entire year. They literally like smacked every team they played, and then they lost to Bama, which was like okay. I wasn't that impressed when I watched Bama against Auburn or Arkansas. I was impressed when I watched them against Georgia, but like I low key feel like Georgia and Michigan are better teams than Alabama right now, even though
It's
it
gonna
shouldn't be
it's
that
gonna
way.
be a hard mental block to overcome when they're gonna have to maybe play Alabama again. I mean, after that loss,
Yeah,
like they hadn't experienced that all year, and they're gonna have to recoup. I mean, who knows? It might have been good for them to lose that game. Maybe fuels their fire. Maybe they come out even better. But still a lot for us to learn about Georgia. Uh, and now we will get on to the number 2 seed, the out of nowhere team for this year, the Michigan Wolverines, from unranked to number 2 in the college football playoff, and a crazy story. I mean, who would have thought McNaira? I honestly can't pronounce his name to be totally honest. The quarterback from Michigan. I mean, they haven't had steady
right.
quarterback play in a while, but this year he's come into his own to be totally honest and led this team. Uh, Jim Harbaugh, after last year getting so much hate and everyone saying he should be fired, he
He
comes
stinks.
out, coaches a great season, beats Ohio State finally, and now they're number 2 in the college football playoff. What do you guys think?
I thought that after Michigan lost to Michigan State, they were just like done because that game, it felt like that whoever won that game in my eyes was going to make the college football playoff. But then Michigan State just got absolutely destroyed by Ohio State. And like I think everyone started to like see that Michigan had a shot still after that because Ohio State was still on their schedule. And I think like Alex said, Michigan doesn't beat Ohio State like at all. So that game, you can make an argument game of the year. Super entertaining. Haskins had 5 touchdowns.
Monster.
But I think Michigan. I mean, I think you can make an argument they deserve the 1. But like Alex was saying, I think Alex, your take wouldn't have been as hot if you would have said Alabama 2,
Michigan 1,
Georgia
Bama
3.
2. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
That's fair.
I think Michigan has a real shot at winning it all because, like Joey said, they actually have steady quarterback play with McNamara. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right
That's
either.
better than I pronounced it.
Yeah. And they still have a really solid defense led by Aiden Hutchinson. So I think that I think the winner of Michigan Georgia is going to win it all. That's my take.
I was gonna say the
Love
same
that.
thing, to be totally honest with
Love
you.
that take.
But back to Michigan. I mean, we've seen them put up a lot of points in these past few weeks. I mean, they've just scored a lot of points, and their defense has been stout as well. I mean, obviously led by Aiden Hutchinson, a Heisman finalist. And they've just been playing good all around football, and they're a team to look out for and be worried about in this college football playoff.
I think they're the hottest team in football right now, college football. Like they're just dominating teams they played
Yeah,
against.
they are.
I
For
was
sure.
I was so impressed by that Ohio State win. I just didn't think Harbaugh could do it ever. I was so impressed by that Iowa domination where they just blew them out like it was nothing. And I think they're just going to continue to steamroll. And I genuinely think they should have had the 1 seed, but I'm not too angry about the 2 seed. I think it's definitely deserved considering the run they've been on since the Michigan State loss.
Mm-hmm. All right, now it's time to get on to the number 1 seed. I mean, we see him again in this position. Who would have thought? Let's be honest. But we see Alabama in this top spot once again. To the unliking of a lot of people, and maybe the liking of maybe just Crimson Tide fans. Let's be honest. Um, but nonetheless, they're there again, and they're going to be playing Cincinnati in that first game. It's definitely been a hell of a ride for them. They've had some really close games. I mean, against Auburn, they lost to Texas A&M earlier in the season. It's been kind of a roller coaster for them. I mean, that's actually crazy to think about. They go to Auburn and have that game where they have a drive, like that end of the game drive to win it in the end, and against an Auburn team that wasn't supposed to be competent, but they just did not play good football until the end. And then they come out the next week and smoke Georgia. I mean, that's just crazy to me. And I mean, Bryce Young, obviously the Heisman favorite by far after that win against Georgia. He's just been playing great football. He's so smart and talented. I mean, all these Alabama quarterbacks in these past few years have been smart and talented, it seems like. And their defense and O line has been pretty on and off. I mean, you get a totally different side of them sometimes. I mean, we got to see which side of them is going to come out in that college football playoff. If their hot side comes out, they're going to win and win and win. I have no doubt in my mind about that. But I mean, they could be off, and then they might lose to a team like Cincinnati. Let's be totally honest. So, what do you guys think?
Not impressed.
I think you go ahead.
Sorry, I don't like them that much as the 1. I like them as obviously a playoff team. Like you can't not put Bama in. Yeah, 12-1, big win against Georgia. But I saw that Auburn game, and I'm thinking to myself, what's going on? It's Alabama. Like I know it's a big rivalry, and like Auburn for some reason competes all the time. But that Alabama team should not be anywhere near losing to Auburn. They lost to what would you say they lost to Texas A&M? It was close against LSU. It was close against Arkansas. Like I just don't see how this football team is better than Michigan currently, but I don't hate it being 1 or 2. So,
Yeah, it kind of feels like no team deserved like a 1 spot this season in college football. Bama came in and beat them convincingly. Is my audio cutting out?
Yeah, your audio just cut out for like the entire section you just talked there.
Yeah, I couldn't hear you for like the last couple of
Last
seconds.
10 seconds probably.
Oh my God. Just
All right.
restart what you said if you're
All right,
watching this.
I was just saying, usually, like, there's a team that you can really pinpoint as the one. But this year, I mean, like, Bama, it didn't feel like they deserved the one because they had, like you guys were saying, like a few games where they really just didn't look good. Like, they barely beat Auburn. Like, really, really barely beat Auburn. Auburn had it up until the final drive, and then Bryce Young had a Heisman moment. And they
Pitch?
lost
That
to
was
A&M.
insane. Or against Jordan, never mind. Go ahead.
But you have to put them at one because they beat the top dogs. But I like looking at the college football playoff. I'm not really treating them like a powerhouse one or anything like that. Like I said, I think the winner of Georgia Michigan is going to win it all. So I think Bama deserved one, but I don't think that like truly they are
A
that
one
team.
seed caliber team. I know what you mean.
I mean, I just think Nick Saban. I mean, I'm putting him at one and his team over Michigan. In my opinion, I think they rightfully deserve that number one seed.
That's crazy. Is that legacy kind of thing? Is that previous seasons? Because how do they deserve it more than Michigan, other than the fact that they are always like the one seed?
What do you mean? They just played some great football against the best team in the nation. So
Yeah,
I mean,
and they played some awful football against awful teams. Michigan didn't play awful football against any teams. They lost to a very good Michigan State team, which obviously they weren't very good after, but very good at the time, and then smacked everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't. I don't
Yeah,
see the take for it. I'm not. I
there's
see the
just
take
there's
for it.
just some uncertainties, and obviously the committee saw some stuff that we're not talking about right now. But let's get into our Heisman picks and the finalists that we see as of right now. For me, I think the four have got to be in no particular order as of right now. Bryce Young, Aiden Hutchinson, C.J. Stroud, and Kenny Pickett of Pitt. Kenny Pickett, I'll just talk about him right now. He's a dog. He's been playing great football all year. I mean, did you guys see that fake slide against
Yeah,
I
Wake
think that's a little
Forest?
messed up.
That was
I think
kind of
that
sick.
that
I mean,
rule
but
is
it's
stupid.
kind of yeah. I think it's kind of weird. Like it should be illegal, to be totally honest.
Yeah.
I mean, not enough people
Facts.
have done it, but it probably should be because like the defenders are taught to back away, and I mean, you can't really do anything when someone goes to slide and then they just like jump back up and
Keep
run for a
going.
touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
But he's been
but
doing
still
stuff like
same
that
thing.
all season. He's explosive. He's led this Pitt team to the number 15 team in the nation, and he just helped them emerge in that second half against Wake Forest and just destroy them 45-21. But who are you guys' picks for Heisman?
Obviously, Bryce Young. I think that should be everyone's top pick right now. After the last 2 weeks, even though he didn't play impressive against Auburn, I mean that drive. That's just like a moment that, like I said, that was his Heisman moment, really. Like, and then beating Georgia kind of solidified it. Not kind of, it did solidify it. Like, but I would have the same four, honestly. Maybe you can argue like Kenneth Walker or Matt. Is his last name Corral or Coral?
It's Corral.
Corral. But I'd have the
Yeah,
same
but
four.
I don't know about him though, because he's kind of had some bad play recently, and Ole Miss has kind of gone down, so they're kind of stock. So I wouldn't really argue in my opinion.
Well,
But
they
I
didn't
could
they finish
definitely
as
see
a
Kenneth Walker based on his stats.
I have a
what did
different four.
almost
What's up, Alex?
Ole
Go
Miss
ahead,
still
Ken.
finished as the 8. I mean, they kind of had a resurgence towards the end of the season, but
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a different four. I don't think Aiden Hutchinson should be an honorable mention. Than what he's
Bro,
done.
wait,
No,
what?
chill out. Can you let me finish? I think it's impressive. Obviously, he had like 3 sacks against Ohio State and like 3 against like Penn, were like most important games of the season. But like realistically, he has what 13 sacks.
mhm.
right? That's not defensive Heisman winner. That's not.
But
He set the Michigan record.
Yeah, for a freshman, right? That's not like I would rather have Kenneth Walker, who I think is a better player, or not better, but like you know what I mean,
No,
had a
but
better season than
you
him.
see what he did in
Than
that big
Hutchinson.
in that big game against
Yeah, he does it in the
Ohio
big games,
State.
but 13 sacks is not enough.
He had 14 pressures in that game. That is insane. 14 pressures in that huge game. He was the reason they won. He was the MVP of that game. Maybe the Haskins actually. I mean, 5 touchdowns is pretty insane.
probably Haskins.
Yeah, probably Haskins. But I think Kenneth Walker deserves a mention more than Aiden Hutchinson.
That's interesting. I could have honestly argued like if Georgia came out here and won this game and Bryce Young didn't play that great. I mean, obviously, since Alabama won that game, it's over. Give him the Heisman already. Bryce Young won. But Aiden Hutchinson was just right up next, or it was Kenny Pickett, in my opinion.
Yeah.
One of those guys. Kenny Pickett could have won. I mean, he probably wouldn't have though. Honestly, if Bryce Young didn't play good, they would have given it to Aiden Hutchinson, in my opinion.
Which is BS.
I don't think it's BS. He has
No. Look
was
at Kenny
huge
Pickett's
part in their
numbers.
resurgence from being
Kenny Pickett's
unranked
numbers
to ranked.
are if we're going off just stats, Kenny Pickett would win. If it's not like we're excluding teams, we're looking past everything else but stats. Kenny Pickett has the best stats in college football.
But yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like just because he is in the ACC and playing for a Pitt team that's not as well known and not as highly ranked as Michigan. I mean, Kenny Pickett has had a hell of a season. I could have easily seen him, if Bryce Young played bad, get that Heisman over Hutchinson. But I mean, I just don't think that would be the case. I think Aiden Hutchinson will get the runner up, or maybe they'll give it to Kenny Pickett. Maybe they'll surprise us. But talking about CJ Stroud for a second, I mean, I have him at my 4. I mean, he still had a great season. He played good against Michigan. Let's be totally honest. I mean, they scored a good amount of points. He played good in that game. Obviously, they came out with the L, but he still deserves to be talked about after his insane season.
I'll read off the odds after championship week. Kenneth Walker plus 10,000. Will Anderson, the linebacker for Bama, plus 5,000. Matt Corral plus 5,000. Then Stroud and Pickett are tied at plus 3,000. Hutchinson plus 1,600, and then Bryce Young minus 3,500. So
does Hutchinson even have the most sacks this season in college football?
I think he's second. He had 14 because he had one against Iowa last night.
Who was
second
first?
In college football. I'm not sure.
It was probably someone that's not in the Power 5, I would assume.
Will Anderson Jr., Alabama, has 15.5.
That was a D tackle?
No, he's a linebacker.
A linebacker.
He was like fit 6th on Heisman odds.
Interesting.
Okay.
But Aiden Hutchinson just had such a big impact on the team, and he's just the leader of that group. I mean, and he's such like you saw him after the game. He was very well spoken. I mean, he might be. It's hard to say, but he might be over Thibodeau in the draft this year. If I'm going to be totally honest, he could get drafted over him just because of how he played in those big games, and NFL teams might like that. So who knows? He could be the number 1 draft pick based on how he plays in this college football playoff.
I like that.
So I assume we all have Bryce Young winning it. I think it probably should be obvious.
Yep.
So you guys got it runner up.
Probably Hutchinson. Either Hutchinson or I'm gonna say either Hutchinson or Stroud, not Kenny Pickett, but just because I feel like Stroud had more impressive wins, like leading his team, and like you said, he didn't really play bad in their losses or anything. Like he kind of seemed like I thought CJ Stroud was going to win it after that Michigan State game where he had like 6 touchdowns in the first half, but for that to happen, they needed to beat Michigan really. So, but yeah, I'd probably put Hutchinson at my runner-up.
Yeah, I mean, 38 touchdowns in a season is pretty impressive for CJ Stroud, I would have to say. What about you, Alex? You got it too.
I want to go Pickett. but if we're basing it off of what I think the committee will choose, I think they'll choose Hutchinson. If we're basing it off what I would choose, I think they'll go Pickett. And if we're basing it off like the 4 that I picked, because I don't have Hutchinson in it, that I think the committee will choose, they would pick CJ Stroud. So I have 3 options, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, also Kenny Pickett actually outdid CJ Stroud in touchdowns this year. He threw
He's
42.
better than him. That's why.
He threw 42, but then again, CJ Stroud played in some bigger games, so you could argue that. But anyway, let's get into our CFP picks. This is what it all comes down to. Top 4 teams are decided, and we will decide who will be crowned the champion of this year. Who wants to start it off with the Alabama-Cincinnati game?
Bama.
Roll Tide.
Hey, but
No shot they don't win.
No, but like I said earlier, like we could see like this not as dominant side of Alabama if their offense isn't clicking. I mean, John Mechie has obviously got hurt. He could be out. Who knows? It was his knee, so that's not ever good. But they do have
Wait,
other
is it not
options.
confirmed it's torn?
They do what?
I thought it was confirmed it's tear. No.
Oh, really? I didn't see.
I don't know.
Well, at least
just
on the selection show earlier today, Nick Saban didn't confirm anything, so I have no idea. But
doesn't matter. Jamison Williams.
Yeah, Jamison Williams is also another great target, and he does a lot of damage. So if their offense gets rolling, Cincinnati's not putting up a fight, but I mean, we'll see if that secondary of Cincinnati plays like they've been playing all season. Who knows? They might make it close. Obviously, if Alabama's defense is on point, still think Alabama's going to win. So I think it would kind of need like a total breakdown for Alabama to lose this game. But Cincinnati has played good all season, so who knows?
Yeah, I could see Bama losing. Like, I think I wouldn't be like completely shocked just because of their inconsistency. But like, if both teams are obviously playing at like close to their highest level, Bama's gonna run away with it. So, but I do think that's sort of like a disadvantage if it's like a blowout win. I feel like that could come back to bite Bama. Like, if let's say this Georgia-Michigan game comes down to the wire, and you really get that like college football playoff feel from it, and then Bama just like plays a non-power 5 team that just really isn't good enough to be there and runs over them, I feel like whoever wins that Georgia-Michigan game is going to have more of like that intensity coming into the national championship game. So
I think Bama is going to smack. I don't see Nick Saban losing to a Cincy team that we've determined is obviously great, but haven't really beat anyone. I think Cincy is going to come in, hyped up and slowly realize that they just do not have the talent to beat this Alabama team. And I think they're going to blow them out in a pretty boring game, unfortunately.
All right, let's get into the probably more exciting game, Georgia versus Michigan. I mean, Michigan, like Alex said, is probably the hottest team. And Georgia, coming off a big loss, might be out for revenge. And Michigan might be their victim. So we'll see. I mean, for me, I think it kind of relies on how Michigan's offense steps up to the challenge. I mean, they played Ohio State and Iowa in these past 2 games who don't have that great defenses. I mean, obviously not as good defense as Georgia. I mean, Georgia, when they're at their game, it's really hard to score on them like a lot of teams have realized because they haven't scored over 7 points on them. But will Cade McNamara step up to the challenge? We will have to see. I think Michigan's defense will definitely also impose their will because they've stepped up in these big games. Stetson Bennett will also be. Yeah, this game is interesting because it's 2 quarterbacks that aren't Heisman favorites, aren't like what everyone's talking about.
Elite.
Like for both these teams, most people are talking about the defense, but It's going to be which quarterback steps up, plays a better game, scores more points, obviously, because that's how you win a football game. What do you guys think?
I honestly don't know. This is a really tough game to pick. I'm going with Michigan, but that's not like a confident Michigan pick. But I just think you got to roll with like the hotter team right now at home, and I think that Georgia showed some vulnerability on their defense against Bama, but that is against Bryce Young, so I don't know. I don't think Cade McNamara is like that guy, but he's obviously a solid QB. And if you can get Haskins going in the run game, and then obviously like if you can not let the game get out of hand early, because Georgia, like against Bama, Georgia jumped out to a 10-0 lead. But I'm going with Michigan. I think that if they can get to JT Daniels, like
You mean
it can
Stetson Bennett?
Oh yeah, it's Stetson Bennett. They can get Stetson Bennett with Hutchinson and that pass rush. I like Michigan, but I think whoever wins that is winning it all. But I just don't know who to pick for that game, really.
I got.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Nah, I'm gonna say my pick real quick. I think it's gonna be the best game of college football this year. I think it's gonna be really close. I think both teams are gonna be competing till the end. I think that Georgia showed us that they can be beaten and that they're not some like unbeatable team. And I think that like Michigan not only rides like the insane streak they're on right now, but also rides the fact that Ohio State's losing and comes in and beats them with like a solid 4 TD Hassan Haskin performance, something light, and they win by 7. Again, I'm doing my once a week like set prediction score. 37 to Michigan, 35 to Georgia. There you go.
It's a good game.
All right. Well, I'm gonna what's that word again? I'm kind of forgetting.
Discrepancy.
Yeah.
Here, you make a discrepancy.
I'm gonna be the discrepancy-er.
Oh, nice.
This week.
Don't think that's a word.
I mean, obviously, we've seen if Michigan puts up a lot of points, they're winning this game. Honestly, I mean, Georgia can't put that many points up on the board as we've seen. But I think they're gonna have a resurgence this week. They're gonna be out for revenge. I think it's scarier to play against a team that's coming off that kind of a loss than against a team that's coming off a big high. Against beating Ohio State and Iowa, because they haven't played against this kind of a defense, and they're going to be brought to life. I think Georgia's going to show them what's up, and they're going to take this dub. They're going to come here. It's going to be a pretty low-scoring game. I think it has to be for Georgia to win. And I think Georgia's going to outsmart them, outplay them, and I think they're going to win this game. Kirby Smart needs this win because he really wants to play Nick Saban again because he keeps losing to him. He needs to play him again.
I'd be more confident in Michigan beating Bama than Georgia beating Bama, just because Kirby Smart can never beat Bama. So
that's true.
Facts, yo.
That's true. But the Alabama versus Cincinnati, that is the Cotton Bowl, and the Michigan and Georgia one is the Orange Bowl. Just let everyone just bring that up. Just bring that up.
Facts,
yeah. Say it.
That's crazy, Joey.
That is crazy. It's crazy. All right, who you guys got as your national champions?
Michigan.
Wow.
I'm kidding.
Michigan national champion.
I'm joking.
That's hard to think about. That's crazy. That's a crazy story then.
Harbaugh can't win anything. He's gonna do so well all the way till the end, and then choke against Bama. And Bryce Young is gonna win himself a pennant. No, it's not. That's not what they call it. What do they call it? It's not a pennant. It's not a championship either, though, is it? Is it a college football championship?
Yeah.
Is that what the trophy's called?
National. Oh, the trophy.
Yeah, it's
The
boring.
Is there a special name for the trophy?
I don't know.
I forget, to be totally honest. It's probably someone's name that we just don't really remember because it's not as iconic as the O'Brien Trophy in basketball or the Lombardi in football in the NFL. Um, this is tough. I don't really know because there's two sides of this. I mean, Jordan Davis didn't have a Jordan Davis type of game against Alabama. I mean, the number one D tackle in the nation got kind of stuffed by that Alabama O line, which was kind of surprising. Uh, but basically, I think it's going to have to be a story of what it was in the SEC championship game. I think it's going to have to be if Alabama, their offense gets clicking, I think they're going to win the game. Simple as that. But if Georgia brings pressures more, plays better defense, holds them to obviously a lower score, I think they could come out victorious. But I mean, big quarterbacks win big games, and that's why I'm gonna pick Alabama to be the national champion. I know I
Oh,
said earlier that the winner of Georgia Michigan um, was gonna
I
win, and before like I heard you guys say Michigan, I was thinking kind of Michigan, but I didn't want to be the third Michigan. I had to pick
I literally
Georgia.
just said I was taking Bama, Joey. What the hell?
What?
I said I was joking and that Harbaugh always chokes and that Bryce Young is going to win the whatever the
No,
stupid
I'm saying
trophy's
against
called.
Georgia.
Oh, yeah,
Michigan's
yeah, yeah.
against.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
I
but what?
I know it seems like I'm leeching right now, but in my head after I said Michigan, I was just trying to picture like Cade McNamara beating Bryce Young. Didn't like kind of want to switch to Bama right now.
Nah, you can't do
No,
that.
that's what I'm saying. Like, it's just more iconic when like
No, there's
the
no way
better
Nick
quarterback
Saban
wins.
loses to Harbaugh. There's no way this happens. There's no way. There's no way.
Like, I think the better quarterback's got to win. And like, if I'm gonna be totally honest with you, like Stenson Bennett, like, do you ever see his face like being interviewed? Like in these, I don't
Who
know.
is Stetson Bennett, bro? Who is this guy? Like, I know nothing about him.
Hey, he's a starting quarterback for the number 3 team in the nation. But all right, I'm gonna go with Alabama. Bryce Young, Heisman winner, is gonna show why he is the Heisman, and Saban's gonna do it again. We're gonna come out victorious. I don't know if I want this to happen, but it's gonna happen. Uh, so there you go. We have our picks.
I'm going with Bama/Michigan.
Bama/Michigan.
Nice. That's
All
a good
right, it
pick.
should be really interesting to see how this all turns out. I mean, bowl season is always an awesome time of the year. It's been a great college football season this year. A lot has happened, but I think that just about wraps up this episode 21 of the Mayo Show, and this wraps up the live video on YouTube. See you guys later. But we'll see you guys in the next one.